Hi everyone, and welcome to our last First Friday Art Talk this spring. We'll be picking up the series once more in the fall. My name is Gisela, and I'm a librarian with the Salinas Public Library, and I'll be hosting today's event. And then I would also like to give a very special thank you to both of our artists today. We have Sherree Anderson and Nicole Cromwell, both here, so thank you so much.
Welcome.
Okay, so for today's event, each artist is going to have 30 minutes to do their presentation. Those 30 minutes will include time for their Q&A as well as their presentation. We ask that you please hold off on questions until the end of their presentation. So if a question comes to mind, feel free to write it down in their chat box and we'll read it aloud during the Q&A segment. For those who may be new to Zoom, you can access the chat feature by clicking on the chat button in the menu bar below. I'd also like to remind folks that today's event is being recorded. So if you would not like to appear in the recording, please feel free to black out your screen by turning off your video. So let's go ahead and get started. Our first artist this afternoon is Sherree Anderson. Sherree is drawn to the colors, shapes, and details of Monterey County's landscape and seascape scenes, which are featured in her realism oil paintings. She is director of Venture Gallery, and her works have been displayed at venues including the Galeria Tonantzin in San Juan Bautista, Venture Gallery in Monterey, the Pacific Grove Art Center, and Monterey Museum of Art. So I'm very excited to welcome Sherree.
Hi, welcome to everybody. It's great to see you here today. We're going to go ahead. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. Yeah, and as Giselle already said, some information, but I'm going to tell you a few other things about myself. And then we'll go into have photographs of some of my paintings. I'll talk a little bit about those. And then as Giselle said, then we'll have question and answer at the end. So I am a local. I've been here almost my entire life. I was born at Fort Ord, and I attended various elementary schools and Elsa Cell Junior High and North Salinas High School. And after school, after high school, I did not go to college then. I was married and had a family. And later on, when the marriage ended, I put myself through college while working full-time and raising small children. And I finally got a degree in accounting. That's what my professional life was. And it's really funny because people would often say, well, you can't be somebody who's in accounting, you know, you're creative and this and that. And I said, hey, that's me. You know, I think you can be that way. I'm equally as creative as I am, you know, logical. And I think that's how it can be. Anyway, art was always my passion from the time I was young, you know, all the way until obviously through my life. I took art classes in junior high and in high school. At the time, you know, they really were great about offering classes. And at North High, they had an art club. And I was able to participate in that. And in those days, they actually took the students, you know, on a bus, and they would take us to Carmel to visit the galleries and San Francisco. And so for me, that was an eye-opener. I was able to see all kinds of art, and it just, you know, to this day, I'm still that way. You know, when I'm traveling, I go and try to find an art gallery I can go into, and I just, you know, I love it. And I really encourage people, if you don't go to art galleries, to go. It's you don't have to dress a certain way, and you can just go and enjoy. And so I really encourage people to do that. All throughout my professional adult life, I continued to take classes. I took workshops, art classes, and I would paint when I could, which wasn't as much as I liked to. I was too busy trying to make a living and raising a family. I am an oil painter. I paint in oil. However, for about 10 years, I did paint with watercolors. And I did that, it was a nice way when I was traveling. I could just do some little small paintings, but oil painting was always, that's where I like to go. Because when I mess up, I can go over and I can get rid of something, and watercolors is not so forgiving. So anyway, 11 years ago, I retired. I was an assistant superintendent, and so my career was always in the business side of education. But I retired 11 years ago, and when I did, I started taking an adult education art class over in Carmel to just get me back into painting and giving me some confidence that I can do this. And besides that, I met a lot of wonderful people. During that time, I joined the Central Coast Art Association, and Central Coast Art Association, it's a nonprofit organization on the peninsula, but they include all members and all levels of, skills. You can be a beginning artist, you can be a wannabe artist, and you can be someone who has more experience. It doesn't matter. I eventually became a board member on that in that organization, and then finally I was president for 4 years, and now I'm a past president. And that's how I know the next artist is Nicole Cromwell. She was so instrumental in helping us with Facebook, so I certainly appreciate that. CCAA has monthly art demonstrations and annual shows and workshops, and I encourage you to go to their website, Central Coast Art Association, see what it's about, see if it looks like something you might want to participate in. During my time with CCAA, I applied and became a member of Venture Art Gallery, which is located in Monterey. We have 29 members. It's a cooperative gallery, which means that we're member owned and we run it completely with no paid staff. And we've been in business 32 years, 27 years in our location at the Alvarado Mall by the Portola Hotel. I'm in my second year as the director, president of that organization. Over the years, I've won several awards and have shown my work in various galleries, as Giselle had said at the beginning. Last year was a highlight of mine. I was awarded the Professional Artist for 2020 by the Arts Council of Monterey County. And it was such a shocker because there's fantastic artists in our county. But this had to do more with my involvement in the community, the arts community. And so now we'll go on and talk a little bit about my different paintings. Okay, here we go. I'd love to use my cursor, but I found when I was practicing, I couldn't always see it on this, so I probably won't be doing that. So again, I'm at Venture Gallery. I have a website, sherree.net. And if you ever want to come and see my work and the other artists that are there, there's the address at 260 Alvarado Street. The paintings that are here in this first slide, this is 2 paintings, and it's called a diptych. And sometimes you'll see paintings that there'll be 3 of them that will go together, but this is 2. This is a diptych, and they are 2 separate paintings, but they go together. And you'll see that in the middle, you can see that they're framed. In the middle, they have a couple of inches between them. And the concept and the idea is that the paintings are to be hung together, not individually. When I decided to do this painting, I had taken a photograph over on Highway 1. I was driving, and I was going towards Big Sur. And I often pull over and take photographs. I do plein air painting, but I am often outdoor. I paint mostly in my studio. So I took this photograph, I brought it, I came home, looked at the photos, and I thought, this might be an interesting diptych, and I'd never done one before. So I took the photograph, I cut it in half, and then when I used 2 very large canvases. I think this is a 32 by, these are 32s by 38s or something like that. They're large. And I needed 2 stand-up easels to put them on. So what I did is I put 2 easels next to each other, put the canvases on the easels so they'd be right next to each other. And I drew out the painting lightly onto each of the canvases. And for the most part, I actually painted it outdoors because my studio wasn't really large enough for me to put these together. So I did this actually outside for most of the time. And it was fun. I learned a lot by, you'll see how I have an extension in the middle of the painting. There is rocks that continue on. So they're on the right side, and then they also continue on to the left side of the painting. And the same thing with the foreground. You have the different vegetation there. This painting was exhibited in the Monterey Conference Center, and it had been in our gallery, and it sold to a couple from Santa Cruz. So with that, we'll move on. All right, this is the Bixby Bridge, and I think most of you know Bixby Bridge. It's in, you've either been there or you've seen it. It's one of the most photographed areas in our county. This was a commission painting. I had someone contact me that had a photograph of this area, and they wanted me to paint this. And so this was 30 by 26. What I loved about it, there was a lot of things I loved about it, but I loved the water. That day, you know how it is on the peninsula. If the sky is blue enough, the water can be quite enchanting. It isn't always real dark, depending on the day. What people often ask me with my paintings, they'll say, how long does that take? And, I do a lot of details, so it takes me a little longer than maybe others to paint, but it doesn't matter how long it takes to paint, whether it's my style or someone else's. It's all, dependent on the person and what they're doing. And sometimes I'll paint quite fast, but this one was not one of them. All right, the next painting, this is Asilomar walking path. This is over in Pacific Grove. There's a wonderful trail that you can walk on. And that day, it was kind of, the winds were really blowing, so the water was very choppy. And I took my small plein air kit that I take when I want to paint outdoors, and I sat kind of down in the bottom part of where you see that trail kind of go off the page here. And I sat there and I painted a 6x8. I did a little small painting. And I liked it when I got it home, and I thought, I liked it so much that I'd do it in a bigger painting. And sometimes, small paintings for me will not always translate into a bigger painting, but this one I liked. Okay, next one. This painting is called Twisty Trees. It was painted over at Pebble Beach at Point Pescadero. I was taking a workshop, and the person that was teaching the workshop she teaches you how to paint an underpainting in acrylics. So this painting, the underneath part of it was all done in acrylics, and then I did oil over top. She also teaches the opposite between warm and cool. So if you look at the sky is cool. It's a blue, it's a cool color, but you can kind of see some pinkish, yellowish, orangish peeking through there a little bit. That's the underpainting was done in warm, pinkish, yellowish colors. Same thing under the ocean. The ocean had same thing, pink, a little darker pinks in there, and you can see that peeking through. And then if you look at the tree, the cypress tree, there's some red peeking out of the underneath part of the cypress tree branches. And that's because red is warm and the colors on top were going to ultimately be cool. And then in the rocks are usually warm. So you put a cool color underneath that, and that was blues. It was an interesting workshop. For me, being outdoors and having to paint an underpainting all in acrylic and then turn around and putting it, then going back and doing it all in oils was time consuming. And when you're out there and the wind is blowing and it's cold along the coast, it took a little more time than I wanted to do. But I like the thought and I like the style, and I will probably try it again. All right. This is Crystal Waters. This painting is of China Cove, which is over at Point Lobos. If you've ever taken a nice long walk on Point Lobos, you'll see this is a walking trail that you can go around to China Cove. When I was painting it, I decided to use a palette knife. So the foreground rocks, the rocks that are on the left and the front, are done with a palette knife. So I could get this real kind of thick, texture that I wanted. And then in the background, I also did those rocks. Some areas of it you can see are done with a palette knife, and the kelp that I added on the water there is done with palette knife. Otherwise, I use brush. This painting was in the gallery. It sold. There was a couple that was from San Francisco on their honeymoon, and they were taking a walk through Point Lobos. And they took this walk, and apparently they came into the gallery. I wasn't working that day. And they saw my painting on the wall, and it reminded them of their honeymoon and the walk, and they bought it as a remembrance for their honeymoon. So I was thrilled. I thought that was pretty cool. When they called and told me, I thought, that's kind of nice. The next painting is a landscape of Old Stage Road. For those of you that are familiar with East Salinas, Old Stage Road is this old road that's been there for years. Of course, it's paved nicely now. I love to paint trees, and I love our oak trees, especially our scrub oaks. And so I took some photographs and came back and painted this in my studio. It was during spring, so you have a lot of poppies and a lot of lupin. And then it was getting ready to rain that day, so that's why the clouds are kind of stormy looking. In the gallery, I traditionally sell more seascapes, but I was drawn to this, so I just thought, I'm gonna paint it. I like it, so there we go. This painting is Remnants of the Slough. If you drive past Moss Landing and you go, instead of going to Watsonville, you can turn left and take a road that takes you behind the slough. It has a wonderful road. It's beautiful views. And I was on this road, and I took several photos, and this used to be the area to the right that you can't see was dairy farmers were there at one time. And so you see the bridge here that was built. It's now, it's just remnants of it. It's all broken down because it's all the marshy area there. But when I painted this one, I won an award for it. And I actually sold the painting a week later, which I was very happy about that. My husband and I like to travel, and so this is Fiji. We were in Fiji, and we were staying at this place, and we would walk this beach every day. It was about 1.5 miles long. There wasn't very many people on it. And I am very fond of painting palm trees. I love painting palm trees. And so this painting, you'll see the detail in the palm trees, and it just felt so calm and peaceful. My next picture here, Tropical Splendor, is actually from Key West. We were riding bikes, and I took this photograph. And when I got home and saw my different photos, I thought it might be fun to paint a square photo. I don't usually paint with square canvases, but I thought this would be kind of fun. Small, it's a little small painting. And again, you see, I really love doing palm trees. You see the detail in the palm trees and the varying colors that I use. And I liked the shadows on the sand that it projected. And you can see in the very background, there's clouds. It was starting to get a little bit cloudy that day. But And at that point in time, the sky was so blue, and the water was, because it's very sandy right there, it's very shallow, so the water was very light blue. And this is my last painting that I'll show you today. This is was taken, the photo was taken back east during the fall. And so the painting is called A Fall Day. And what I did, I love, it hadn't completely changed to the oranges and yellows yet, but it was just starting to. And you can see the kind of the oranges in the background. And in the front on the left side, there's kind of pinkish orangish plants there. I used a palette knife to create that texture in those plants, and also on the in the ground area, the dirt that goes into the water. I used a palette knife. I used a palette knife when I put some of the reflections in. And, but otherwise, I love doing fall colors. Later on, I thought, oh, I should have put a lot more orange in it. But at the time, that's the way it was. And I didn't think about it till quite a bit later. So I think that's it for me. I think we're at the end of my presentation, and we can do questions and answers if that's okay with you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm back.
Perfect. So thank you so much for that lovely presentation. It was fascinating to listen to the story, challenges, and techniques used for each of your artworks. Like Sherree mentioned, if you have any questions, please feel free to write them out in the chat. I'll go ahead and read them out for folks. Oh, perfect. Jeff has a question. Do you like to paint only one picture at a time, or do you paint multiple paintings at once?
That's a great question. Sometimes I'll work on more than one painting at a time because it takes a while for oils to set up enough that I can go back in and, you know, put my next layering into it. So oftentimes I will have more than one painting going. But I really like concentrating on the one painting. You know, when I'm working on it, I going between paintings sometimes will, the color scheme might be different. And so sometimes that will mess me up a little bit. But for the most part, I usually have at least two paintings going.
Okay, we have another question from Shuyi. What does having an acrylic background do for the oil painting in terms of how those mediums play with each other?
Great question. What the idea behind it is you work with your values. So you work with your darks and lights and medium values. And by putting it, by painting, by using acrylic, it dries fast, really fast. And so you go in and you start, you can make sure your values seem right. So in other words, if your water is kind of a medium value, you'll paint, like I said, you'll paint pink or orange, something warm underneath that ultimately cool oil that's going to go over top. And if the level of how dark you want that water to be, you will paint underneath. You'll do your value study. You'll set up things so you really show your lightest lights and your darkest darks are going to show up in the underpainting. And then when you go back and put your oils over it, you've already got a roadmap for where your lightest lights are and darkest darks and where your medium colors are going to be. And then on top of that, this instructor likes to be able to show these warm colors underneath popping through, as you saw in that painting I did, kind of just peeking through in different areas. It gives it a different look, a different depth. And there are some wonderful artists that use this technique. For the most part, I just go in, I just go in and start painting my painting with oils and just layer. And that's what I normally do.
That's a really cool technique. I had no idea that you could give paintings undertones with acrylics. I'd only heard of texture, but not the undertones. So we have another question from Dorothy. She's asking if the artwork on your walls is painted by you.
Yes. Yes.
Very nice. I actually have a question for you. So you mentioned that travel inspires you to paint. What has been the most inspirational location you have visited so far?
Oh gosh. Well, you know what? I really love Sedona. Those red rocks are amazing to me. However, I've never taken my oils there. I've tried to do it with watercolors, and I'm simply not good enough to with watercolors to get the way I want those rocks to look. But we're going in a short period of time here, and so we're driving. So I'm going to take my small plein air kit, and I'm going to work on oils while we're there, and I think that'll be fun. So I don't know if that's my favorite or most inspiring because wherever I go, I'm enthralled by all kinds of topography and views, and it's just kind of whatever the moment is, you know.
So is Sedona in Arizona? Sorry, I'm not that clear with.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Sedona's in Arizona. Yes, it is.
Okay, so you mentioned a little bit about how oils take a really long time to dry. Is that the biggest challenge of working with oils, or would you say something else is more challenging?
Yeah, I would say that that's it. I love working with oils because I like the richness of them. I like the colors I can get with them. I like the fact that when I screw it up, I can fix it for the most part. The challenge with oils is simply, especially when you're doing plein air painting. So most people do small plein air painting because you're only out there a few hours. And if you're trying to do mountains, for instance, like our local hills here. I went out and plein air painted yesterday along River Road. And so we had the fields in the foreground, and I had Fremont's Peak in the background and the Gavilands, and some beautiful, kind of oak trees and things. Anyway, so when I got ready to put in the sky, which I put that in last, well, the mountains were still a little wet. And so you have to be careful because I'm putting in a light bluish color and the mountains are kind of obviously darker. And so you don't want to muddy up the sky. So I use a medium, a quick drying medium to kind of help me. So I always use that, and I use turpentine when I'm outdoors. But when I'm in my studio, I don't care. If it takes, I'll go back to it the next day or a couple of days later. So it's fine.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for answering our questions, Sherree. I see one more from Dorothy. Does it make you nervous when people watch you paint while you're outside, or do you go where there's no one around?
Oh, that's a great question too. It doesn't make me nervous at all. Matter of fact, I go over to Pacific Grove sometimes around Lovers Point or the area away from Lovers Point, and I don't really want to be where there's a lot of people. It just because I'm trying to concentrate. I'm doing my thing, and I don't really like it. And during COVID, I would go over and paint, and there was almost no one out there, but people were respectful. They would come up to me and stay their distance and not bother me. They would say, "Excuse me, can I look at the painting?" and ask a question. But so sometimes I prefer to be by myself, just depending on where it's at. Yesterday I painted with 3 other ladies, and that was great too. So it doesn't really matter.
Okay, well, thank you again. Before I introduce the next artist, I'd like to talk a little bit about an upcoming program we have, our new bilingual delicious and nutritious cooking class series. Our next session will be Monday, May 24th at 10:30 a.m. So get ready to tie on your apron and cook a delicious plant-based dish. Vegan chef Maria, co-owner of Park Road Cafe and owner of Cali Dog, will show you step by step how to make her cauliflower ceviche. So we'll provide you with a shopping list beforehand so you can follow along in your own kitchen. You can register online, and I'll make sure to include the registration link, date, and time of the event in the chat box. I'll also stick around at the end of the event in case anyone has any questions about this event or any of our other upcoming library programs. So now I am happy to introduce our second artist, Nicole Cromwell. So Nicole began painting as a way to find balance in her life and discovered a newfound way to express her passion for healing. She creates acrylic abstract ocean and landscapes with soothing colors, which evoke a sense of peace, hope, and solace. Her paintings are often a reflection of her personality with a combination of a calm, compassionate energy and a bold confidence. I'm so excited to welcome Nicole and learn more about her story.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for asking me to join you. And Sherree, she's amazing. Those paintings are incredible. All right, so I will go ahead and share my screen and then just tell you a little bit about myself. Okay, there we go. All right. So I've been painting about 7 years now, and I'm actually a nurse. That's my full-time job. And I went to nursing school in Monterey at MPC, and then got a job at Chomp and worked there for a few years. But I knew that I wanted to be a flight nurse. So I went up to Stanford and was lucky enough to be hired into the ICU there. And then I did that for a couple of years, and then I did get on the flight team on the helicopter, and that's me and one of our pilots, and that was just my dream job, and I absolutely loved it. But I had to work night shift, and I'm just not a night shift person. So that career was, although exciting, it was short-lived. And then I've stayed in critical care my whole career. I've worked in the ICU. I've been on the code team, it's the critical care response team. So we respond to all the emergencies in the hospital. And I stepped back from that about a year ago. I needed a break and about to get back into it. But anyway, one of the highlights of my career was my volunteer work. The other photo there, I was lucky enough to go on over 25 missions all over the world, and we fixed cleft lips and palates. And it was super rewarding, and I loved the work. So, but back to and it's Nurse Week, so happy Nurse Week to any nurses out there. But that's how I got into painting. I had never painted before. My grandmother was an artist, my father was an artist, but it wasn't something that I ever thought I had any ability to do. So I never really tried it until this is a video that I took some classes with a group called Art to Life. They're out of San Francisco, Sausalito, and it's Nicholas Wilton, and he's just this incredible teacher, and he shares his knowledge so well with everybody. So they made this promotional video and included me. So I'll just play the video real quick for you and then explain a little bit more. Let's see if the video, oh, shoot, the video didn't play. Well, I'll tell you about it anyway. So I started painting because I was taking care of a patient in the ICU. Her name was Amy, and she had leukemia, and I got to know her by way of her family. And when they told me that she was an artist, I was like, well, this is her room. Let's decorate her room for when she wakes up. And the next day, her room was just filled with all kinds of artwork, and it was so beautiful. And she was my age. And when she lost her battle with cancer, a group of nurses said, well, we've got to do something to honor Amy. So all of us went to a create night in San Jose. There was 14 of us, and I just realized, like, this was so much fun. I'm having a blast. And so I started doing paint and sip nights and kind of playing with painting a little bit here and there. But I didn't really like copying what other people were telling me to copy. So I started going to workshops, and I went to a workshop up in Oregon by Flora Bowley. And it was all an intuitive painting workshop where I learned so much all about just painting with intuition and having fun and trying different things. And that sort of started my whole painting journey. And it just kind of took off from there. And now I've been painting for about 7 years, and I absolutely love it. And I've found that it's incredibly healing for me. Working in critical care nursing is tough. You see some things that you just don't really ever want to be a part of, but just witnessing all the pain and suffering a lot is challenging. So painting has just been incredibly healing for me. And then sort of this transition happened when I found that the paintings that I was doing were healing to other people. It was just super rewarding for me. So anyway, this is kind of my process here. I tend to write all kinds of things on the canvas before I start. So I'm big on it setting intentions. And so this one was sort of a breakthrough painting for me. And I did this for my aunt. She had lost her husband. And so I thought I'm going to paint something for her. And I put all these words of just healing and strength and intention behind the painting. And then I ended up painting this one. And it's turned out to be, it was sort of a breakthrough painting for me. I do prints of it, and the original sits with her in Maryland. So that's my process. I paint a lot of, I write a lot of quotes and poetry on the canvas, and then I'll always make a note and write it down somewhere and put it on the back of the painting so I remember what's on there. And that's how I name a lot of my paintings too. Just sometimes the quotes will come through in that, and then and somehow it's weird how it happens, but a lot of people, my buyers, they when I tell them the story behind it and what's on there, they feel an instant connection, and so it's super rewarding for me. And so this is the first paintings that I ever did when I was up at that workshop. And the one on the left, it's changed quite a bit, but it's hanging in my bedroom, and it says "Be brave" on the base of it. And so I wake up every morning and I remember, okay, just go out there and be brave and have a great day. So those were my first ones. This was my home studio. I took apart my living room and sort of sectioned it off and made a little studio out of it. And it was kind of a mess, but it worked for a long time. And I still have a lot of things in there, but I've graduated to a bigger studio now that I'll show you. This was my first show, and I was just painting for the fun of it, and I had no intention of selling anything or presenting my work. And some friends encouraged me to do that, and so I did. And that was my first show in Gilroy, and all 3 paintings sold, and super proud of that beginning. This was my first solo show. It was a little boutique out in Carmel Valley. And this painting is called Irish, and it actually went to Ireland to a really kind family that I know. And then this was my second solo show. This was out at Testarossa Winery in Carmel Valley. And they were super generous and let me show my work there for 3 months. It was lovely. And now I have my own studio. It's in Carmel by the Sea. And I can't believe how fortunate I am to be in there. I had set an intention, like I'm going to find a studio, and I just kept telling people that I'm looking for a studio, and I wrote it down and I thought about it every day. And then I put an ad on Nextdoor, and someone answered me and said, well, we have art studios in the Church of the Wayfarer in Carmel, and one is opening up if you'd be interested. And so I said, sure, I'll go check it out. And I couldn't believe my eyes when I walked in there. It's about 300 square feet, and it's got a beautiful view of the ocean, and it's just gorgeous. So, and I'm in there with 4 other artists, and they're all so incredibly talented, and it's a wonderful community. So hopefully when the church opens back up for real, I can have visitors. I'll definitely be doing the open studios this fall. So that'll be happening. And there's just my little art studio with that one painting on it. My work is currently now in a place called Lanai in the Crossroads. It's a little sort of an ocean-themed Hawaii boutique and art gallery. And I've got, I think, about 10 pieces in there right now. And there's my little niece and some of the paintings. And those have all since sold, but it's a great little space. And then I'll just go through a few of my paintings here. I paint all in acrylic, and they're mostly abstract landscapes, seascapes, and then just some sort of random abstract paintings. That one. This one actually hangs in a certain movie star's home in LA. Kind of proud of that. This one is called The Dance. And this one, I was sort of thinking along the lines of the dance in my career, with being very kind and compassionate. That's what the pink represents. And then the base is the darker colors. And that, to me, is how nurses have to be advocates and very strong in advocating for their patients and standing up to the doctors. And so that's what that series is. And those are actually hanging in at the Lanai. There's 5 of them. And I love, and there's one right there. I love this series. And there's just another abstract ocean painting. This one is in Lanai as well. And this was really fun. This one is called Marshmallows Over Pacific. And I named it that because it was taking the heavy body white acrylic paint out and spreading it on and making the clouds just felt like that marshmallow fluff. And so the name just sort of stuck for me. And just another abstract one that I did. Another ocean abstract that's hanging in my studio right now. This one, I'm super proud of this one. This one's called De Novo, and that means new beginnings. And this was my first ever painting that was accepted into a juried show. And so this one went down to the Brea Art Gallery and hung there for several months and then sold. But I love this one. This was part of my ocean series. I did about 10 of them. They started out as part of a series based on a commission. When I do my commissions, I usually paint, I'll find out what the person is looking for, and then I'll paint 3 similar paintings. And that makes it takes the stress off of me to create the perfect painting for them. They actually get to choose from 3. So that just makes it easier for me and then gives them a choice. So, but then this whole series sort of came out of that commission. This one is called The Playa, and it just reminds me of, I don't know, beaches in Mexico and having a cold Corona beer. So there's a few of those. And this one's called Sophia. And this one recently sold from the Lanai Gallery and Boutique where it was hanging. And it's based upon a quote by Sophia Loren. I love that. It was part of the whole ocean series as well. And that was actually an underpainting that I thought, wow, why didn't I just leave that as a whole painting? Because I just thought it was so pretty. And I've tried to redo it and I just can't. This was, I do some florals too. I love to experiment. I'm still growing a lot in my artistic path, and I love doing florals. And I painted this one and the next one that I'll show you around the time that we had the big fires in Big Sur and Santa Cruz. And these were just little 5x7 small paintings. But what I did was I painted several of these, and then I sold them as part of a fundraiser for, there was a little school in Santa Cruz that pretty much all of the families lost their homes. And so I painted these and sold them and donated the money to that fundraiser. And to me, they represented like sort of the fire that was going on in the center of the flower. And then the dark areas are sort of the strength around the community, holding them together and supporting them through that. So that's what that was. And oops, sorry, missed that one. And then this was another commission. I did 3 of these. This was the Big Sur series. I love that one. And some more florals. And it's funny, I love these so much. They were actually in a little boutique in Carmel by the Sea, and they didn't sell. And I was actually really happy they didn't sell because I love them so much that I was like, great, I'm taking them back and they're mine now and they're not for sale. And I've tried to redo them and I just, for some reason, I just can't. It's really challenging to try and replicate a painting. I've found it to be almost impossible. So anyway, that's that. I love those. And then I'll just share about some exciting things going on for me. I am a finalist in this this wine label design contest, and I'm super excited. They had over 8,000 entries, and mine is one of the final 15. And a funny story about this this wine and the design. When I thought about it, the Beaujolais Nouveau is a wine that comes out every fall. It's a very young, fresh, fruity wine, and I had taken a few days down in Big Sur at Asilomar just to have a little personal retreat and some quiet time for myself. And I thought, oh, I'm going to paint something for this wine label design contest. And so I sat out there and I just thought, you know, I tried not to overthink it too much, but I thought I'm just going to play and have fun. And I remembered back years and years and years and years ago, right out of high school, I became a flight attendant with Pan Am, which tells you kind of how long ago that was. And I remember training in the first class, and they, you know, the lead purser told us, you know, he was training us for first class service, and he said, we serve this wine in first class. We serve only the best, and this is the George de Boeuf Beaujolais. And so that kind of stuck with me. It's weird how random memories stick with you your whole life, but that's where the inspiration came from this. And so I called it Only the Best. And who knows, we find out the winner probably in the next few weeks. But if I do win, my design will be on over 1 million bottles, which would be super exciting. So if you see this in the grocery store and you see that design, you'll know it's me. Who knows? I could win. I don't know. And then this is another exciting project that's going on right now. I don't know if you've heard about it, but Cromwell is bringing these gigantic hearts to downtown. They're 52 inches by like 52 inches wide, and they're enormous. These hearts are like 40 pounds. They're made out of fiberglass. And they had a contest for local artists to enter to see who would be painting them. And so the theme was, what does Cromwell mean to you? And so I submitted my application, and I thought, this, you know, you gotta try things out, and who knows if I'll get in. But I kept thinking of that one quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And so it's like, I'm just gonna try it. And so on my application, I wrote what Cromwell meant to me, and what that was community, and just everything about Cromwell that I love so much. And I pitched to them, you know, if I do this, then I want to set intention on this, and I'm going to find out what Cromwell means to everybody around me, and I'll write it on the heart. Well, I was shocked, and when I got in and was given this honor. So the intention has been set. The words are all written all over the heart, and I got my paints yesterday. So I'm starting to work on it, and I still don't know what I'm going to do with it. It's going to be bright and bold and beautiful, and the words will eventually get covered up, but the intention is in there. And I'm just super excited to be a part of this project. And so there will be 10 of these all over the city of Cromwell, and the map of where they'll be is in the shape of a heart. And they'll be there from June until the end of August. And then at the end of August, they'll be auctioned off. And the money will go towards scholarships for kids. So it's a super great cause. And I'm just so incredibly honored to be a part of it. And I found out that they wanted new artists to be a part of this whole project. So I think that's part of why I got in. So super exciting. And then this is another kind of fun, like I feel like a year's worth of fun and exciting things have happened in a month, and it's crazy. But I was asked by Stanford's leadership to present a painting class for Nurse Week. So I'm working on that. I mixed all the paints up yesterday, and I'll be teaching them painting for 4 hours on Monday. So I'm very excited about that, to bring that to my colleagues. I'm really hoping that they can, they're inspired to start painting themselves or create or whatever. So that's my other exciting thing. And then this, I don't know, I wanted to play this video. I don't know, I don't really know the audience here, and I'm not sure if there's aspiring artists on here or emerging artists, but this was just I don't know if it'll play. This is just a quote by Ira Glass that I just love about starting painting. Oh, it's working, okay.
Nobody tells people who are beginners, and I really wish somebody had told this to me, is that all of us who do creative work, like, you know, we get into it, and we get into it because we have good taste. But it's like there's a gap that for the first couple of years that you're making stuff, what you're making isn't so good. Okay, it's not that great. It's trying to be good. It has ambition to be good, but it's not quite that good. But your taste, the thing that got you into the game, your taste is still killer, and your taste is good enough that you can tell that what you're making is kind of a disappointment to you. You know what I mean? A lot of people never get past that phase. A lot of people at that point, they quit. And the thing I would just like say to you with all my heart is that most everybody I know who does interesting creative work, they went through a phase of years where they had really good taste. They could tell what they were making wasn't as good as they wanted it to be. They knew it felt short. It didn't have this special thing that we wanted it to have. And the thing I would say to you is everybody goes through that. And for you to go through it, if you're going through it right now, if you're just getting out of that phase, you got to know it's totally normal. And the most important possible thing you could do is do a lot of work, do a huge volume of work, put yourself on a deadline so that every week or every month, you know you're going to finish one story. Because it's only by actually going through a volume of work that you're actually going to catch up and close that gap. And the work you're making will be as good as your ambitions. In my case, like I took longer to figure out how to do this than anybody I've ever met. It takes a while. It's going to take you a while. It's normal to take a while, and you just have to fight your way through that. Okay?
I actually want to try and get back to that other video if I can, this one. Oh yeah, it'll play now. Okay. There it goes. I was working in the intensive care unit. I did some flight nursing but mostly intensive care. I was taking care of a patient named Amy. She had leukemia. I reached out to her family and was just said, you know, you've got to decorate this room. 2 days later, her room was just plastered with the artwork. When she lost her battle, the nurses really took it hard. I said, well, we've got to figure out a way for us to have a little bit of closure and for us to honor Amy. We signed up for this random art class. It was such a fun night. And I was like, well, I'm really enjoying this. And so then I just started painting. When I first started painting, and I would do sort of these soothing paintings of like soothing landscapes and colors, making art has been so healing and soothing for me as a person. And it sounds woo-woo, but I manifested like, I'm gonna get a studio and it's gonna be beautiful. And then it was a beautiful day in Carmel and I was dropping artwork off at a little boutique that I was showing at. And I was like, I'll just go by and see it. And it had the most gorgeous ocean view. I was just standing there with my mouth open, like, I can't believe I'm getting this opportunity. Like, this is more than I could possibly have dreamed of. I want to be able to bring some sort of a program to nurses that helps them heal and find the gift that I found. And so that's out there in the universe, and I don't know what that's going to look like, but I'm going to figure it out how to share that, because it's, you know, it's brought so much joy and healing into my life. Like, we have to share that stuff. Got more for a purpose. All right, so that's the video I wanted to show you in the beginning. It's so important for me to give Amy credit, because I feel like I wouldn't have done any of this if I hadn't met her. So that's my presentation, and let me know if you have any questions.
Thanks, Nicole. Those were beautiful videos. Loved learning about the power of healing behind each of your paintings, not just for the viewers, but also the effect it has on you.
Yeah, that was a real turning point for me.
I actually have a question. So you mentioned how quotes are a huge part of your painting process. I'm curious how you find them.
I find them a lot even on Instagram. I've got some poetry books. Rumi, I've got some Rumi books. I love his poetry. but mostly kind of on social media. When I see something I love, I'll take a snapshot of it and then I'll write it down. And then I'll take that and get it right onto a canvas.
We have a question from Jeff. He says he's asking whether you sign your artwork.
It's interesting. I sign it on the back. I find, for me, I just find it distracting to have it on the front. I don't love my signature either. So, yeah, I usually just sign them on the back. I'm getting better about signing them on the front. I'm doing a few here and there, but mostly it's on the back.
Comment from Shuyi. This is about your signature. She says that she has a very bad painting signature. How long ago was that painting night, the one that started your art journey?
That was probably 6 years ago. And that one was sort of a breakthrough, and I used that on my business cards and a lot of my media.
Okay, I'm curious about another thing too. So I'm assuming at one point, maybe even right now, you were a full-time nurse and you were also a working artist. So how did you strike that balance between managing both professions?
It's challenging. I'm still working full time, and a lot of nurses, and myself included, we work 3 12-hour shifts, and that becomes your full time. So um, I work pretty much Monday through Wednesday at the hospital, and I still commute up to Stanford. I have a little commuter pad that I stay in when I work. And then I come back here on the weekends, pretty much Thursday through Sunday. And I'm in my studio usually 2 or 3 days a week, but it's worth it to live here on the Monterey Peninsula. You just can't beat it. But I've been at Stanford for 19 years, and so it makes it hard to leave. But I have early retirement in mind, and I'm figuring it out, and I'm working hard towards that.
That's awesome.
That's in the plan.
So,
But I don't think I could ever give up nursing either, because I love it so much. So I don't know. So I'll probably just go back to way part-time eventually, and then keep painting more.
she's wondering what helps you maintain that energy for both your job and your art.
It's really the balance, because every time I go in my studio, a big smile comes across my face, and I'm so happy to be there. And so I have to keep going back, and I love creating, and it's like she knows it's challenging. It's making yourself very vulnerable, putting your artwork out into the world, and knowing that not everybody's going to love it, but it's okay because it's partly for me, and it helps with my balance in life.
Jeff was asking whether you paint multiple paintings at once, or do you like to do one at a time?
I've got a ton going at all times, and it's funny. Like some of the commissions, I probably overthink them, and some of them can take 6 months, 8 months, and it's just kind of I have to be in the mood to work on them, and so they take a long time. I'll try and do a series at a time, and try and finish things up, but there's always 1 or 2 hanging around that just are a continual work in progress. And I even had a friend who I was doing a painting for her, and it was a gift, and it was like 30 by 30, and she didn't want to see it before I finished, and I brought it to her, and I told her, I said, if you don't absolutely love this, I do not want you to have it. And at first she said, yeah, I love it, and I was like, do you really love it? And she finally admitted, no, I don't love it. And I just said, thank you. Like, I don't want you to have something in your home that you don't absolutely love. And so I took it back, and she's one of my more honest friends, and so I'm so grateful. And I worked on it for another couple months, here and there, not full time. And then I brought it back to her, and she absolutely loves it now.
That's amazing. I'm curious. Okay, so as a nurse, I'm sure you've gotten like a firsthand view of what this pandemic has done to the nation. Has that influenced your painting in any way?
That's interesting. I stepped back. I was on, like I said, the code team. It was the critical care response team, where we'd go to every emergency in the entire hospital at Stanford. So there's a lot going on there. And I had to take a step back from that. I was assaulted by a patient a couple years ago, and it wasn't like physically I was fine. I was just a big pop in the face by a confused patient, and but mentally I just thought, oh, I need to hit a reset button. So I went to the radiology department. And so now I kind of hide out in the basement, and it's okay. Probably going back into the ICU very soon, just because I love the work so much. So I kind of, it was interesting. As soon as the pandemic hit was when I started my new job in radiology. So I really didn't see a whole lot of what was going on. And honestly, I think that kind of saved my soul, because I really, I would have had a really hard time seeing people without their families and without their support. And that just would have broken my heart. And it was still going on all around me, but I was not really in the thick of it anymore. So I'm ready to go back in, and actually going back to the COVID ICU, because there are still a few patients there. And, you know, when we get a surge, or, you know, if we get a surge, I'll be helping out with that. But I don't know that it didn't really change my artwork much, because I just wasn't directly involved in a lot of those, with a lot of those patients.
Mm-hmm. Completely understand. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us. Once again, a very special thank you to both of our artists for speaking at today's event. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. It's my pleasure being here.
If you'd like to explore further their work, I'll include some of their links to their social media, their emails, and their websites in the chat right now. And if you enjoyed today's event, we'd love to have you back at our next First Friday Art Talk, which is happening in the fall, starting in September. So just keep an eye out on our website and on our Facebook for more details to come in the coming months. I'm including the links to those in the chat right now as well. And I'll be sticking around for a little in case anyone has any questions about any upcoming library programs. Otherwise, have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.